It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Rico Brogna, how the hell are we? Doing good? We're optimistic? You know, I gave this description to my wife at about 5 o'clock, long before the Mets began game 2 of this series with the Brewers, long before Travis d'Arnaud hit a walk-off home run, and long before the San Diego Padres did our dirty work. She asked me, how's it going? Are you confident? And I said, baby, here's the way I would describe it. A train is about to run us over. It's about to run all of us over. As soon as I said that, she's like, geez, really? I said, yeah, the train's about to run us over, but we're going to run into that light anyway, just hoping that maybe we're wrong and the train's going to like swerve to the left. And as we sit here right now, recording this live just a couple of minutes after midnight, with about, 2.5 hours to kind of let it sink in that the New York Mets got 2 hit by 6 different Milwaukee pitchers. I think the analogy works perfectly. Look, we all know this team is collapsing right now. It's right before our eyes. We all know this has been garbage to watch, the 3 games that they've played on this road trip. We all know we've seen this story before. But we're going to hope, right? We're going to cross our fingers. We're going to hope that despite the fact that we're running right into a truck or a bus or a train that's going to run us all over and kill our season, we're just hoping that maybe we're wrong. So this is going to be a very schizophrenic Rico Brogna, because there's a part of me, like the optimist in me, who knows all the scenarios. And we'll go through all those scenarios. You will be an expert on the playoff scenarios by the time we're done with this Rico Brogna. So when you think of the scenarios and go through the scenarios and understand that the Mets could clinch on Sunday, like that's possible. That's the optimistic side. That's the optimistic side. Everything is still, dare I say it, right in front of them. And the Arizona Diamondbacks are collapsing along with them. That's the optimistic side. That's where you'll see the positive schizophrenia of me. But then the negative side is when we talk about this bull crap game that we all watched. It was bad. It was ugly and had all the warning signs of a team that's pressing and a team that's collapsing. And Carlos Mendoza, after the game, can say all the right things. Look, it's tough, man. You're facing an opener. You're facing another guy, and Tobias Myers, he's tough. And then you're facing some very good Milwaukee relievers like Devin Williams, like Aaron Ashby, like Joel Payamps. But then you're also facing a guy like Nick Mears at a 150 ERA. And he can say all that stuff. Hey, look, it's tough. Baseball's tough. Pitching's tough. You got to tip your hat to your opponent. And by the way, deep down, maybe all that garbage is true. But we know better. We know better because we've seen this before. We've all witnessed this before. And look, Mets somehow win on Sunday, get a little help. We'll be popping champagne on a Sunday, Rico, and maybe we will laugh about the kind of feeling we have right now. But we've all seen this before. And I don't just mean 2 years ago. I mean our entire lifetime as Met fans. So, as the great Joe Beningo would say, yeah, you could change the team, and you could change the manager, and you could change the stadium, and you could change all this kind of stuff. But deep in our soul as fans, we all have memories. And I'll tell you the exact year that this is reminding me of before we break down this game and we go through all the scenarios, and there's a lot of them, that could lead to this ending somehow positively. The year this is reminding me of is not 2022. That's the one that's nearest to us because it was only 2 years ago. And because Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor, but mostly Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo, are contributing to the collapse again, doing the same crap they did 2 years ago. In fact, I'd argue they've been worse than they were 2 years ago. But the year this really reminds me of is 1998. In 1998, the Mets were in a race with two other teams, the San Francisco Giants and the Chicago Cubs. And the Cubs were trying to collapse. Brant Brown's dropping an effing fly ball in left field. And I went to Shea Stadium that night thinking, this is ours, man. And they lost to the Montreal Expos. And they lost their last 5 games of that regular season. And at least for that final week, the Giants and the Cubs were not world beaters. The Mets were given so many different lifelines, if you will. And I want to remind you of this because I think this about the 98 team too. They won 88 games. Like, you don't eliminate all those wins from early in the season. So I'm not a believer that a team could back into the playoffs. To me, that doesn't exist. Yeah, the Mets are playing like crap. Yeah, they may be getting some help, specifically from the Diamondbacks struggling, just like that 98 team got help from the Cubs struggling. But you don't back into a playoff spot. You may not be playing well at the end of the season, but if you make the playoffs, you make the playoffs. So I just at least say that if everything turns on Sunday, and God knows it won't, but let's just say it does turn on Sunday, I ain't going to apologize, nor should you, because they will have earned a playoff spot, even if they got a lot of help at the end of the season as they were limping to the finish line. But if this ends badly, if this ends as badly as we all fear, that's the comparison that sticks with me. The 1998 collapse in which they lost their last 5 games, the last 3 being in Atlanta. That was the series where Jay Payton pinch ran and got thrown out at third base with Mike Piazza coming up after a John Olerud base hit. And the Braves were playing for nothing. And I think that's where the other comparison comes. The Milwaukee Brewers aren't playing for anything. Now, this was my warning going into the weekend. You got 28 guys on a roster. So at the end of the day, most of the regulars are going to play, and those regulars are going to try. The only thing a team can do vastly different, we saw the Royals even do it in the game against the Braves. The only thing a team can do vastly different, besides sitting a guy here and there, but you can't sit everybody, is how you handle your pitching. Well, look at the Brewers. Look how they handled their pitching over the last 2 days. Look what they did today. They started opener, who they can hit. Okay, fine, it's 1 inning. It's only the first inning. They can't hit Tobias Myers for 4 innings. He's had a very good season. I give him credit. But he looked like Sandy Koufax and Christy Mathewson had a love child. That's how well he was pitching. They can't hit a Brewer bullpen that's literally being tuned up. And we heard Pat Murphy say it early in the game. I got to get my guys in now. They're not going to pitch on Sunday. More on that later. So you know all these guys are coming in. And the Mets, they didn't put rallies together. And they were given a break because even though, yes, Devin Williams is great, and yes, Joel Payamps is good, they saw Nick Mears, a guy with a 6 ERA, with a 2-run game in the 8th inning. And what'd they do? I'll tell you what they did. They did nothing. These at-bats are so lifeless and so pathetic. And what we've witnessed over the last 3 games, 2 games in 2 days, I know the third one you got to go back what feels like 6 months, is you're watching a baseball team that is clearly pressing. I don't know how you can spin that that's not what it is. Yes, you can go through slumps. Yes, we've seen this team go through slumps, but it's the way it looked in this game, to me, that makes it worse. It's not just the not scoring any runs, the getting 2 hit by the Brewers using 18 different pitchers. I mean, these at-bats were pathetic. And because of that clip, and I posted it on social media earlier today in the midst of this game, that clip from the Atlanta game where Steve Gelbs filed a report where Brandon Nimmo admitted they were pressing 2 years ago, and Pete Alonso said, yeah, we were pressing, but this is different because the team has so much fun, and we know how badly that aged. That is, to me, even more proof that those guys are pressing. They admitted going into the Atlanta series, yeah, we pressed 2 years ago. All right, let's see how they're doing. Let's check in on Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso. Brandon Nimmo, since he admitted to Steve Gelbs, yeah, we were really pressing 2 years ago, is 1 for 13. 1 for 13. Pete Alonso, who I have never seen a fan base turn as quickly on an individual player as Met fans have turned on Pete Alonso. And I get it. I'm frustrated with him too. It's not like I'm working as his agent right now. He sucks right now. We've been waiting all year for Pete Alonso to get hot. All year long. We're waiting for this hot streak. Pete's going to get hot. Pete can carry the team. And not only has he not gotten hot, he has looked so overwhelmed and not big enough for the moment over the last week. Pete Alonso's 1 for 10. Now, Pete has not come up in many big situations, mainly because the Mets never get guys on base. In Pete's 10 at-bats, 6 of them have come leading off an inning, which this season was his specialty. There's nobody on base. Great. Get on base. Start a rally. That hasn't happened. But these two guys, Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo, two of the guys that were there 2 years ago. And by the way, Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo in those 2 games against Atlanta, I pulled up their numbers. They weren't like awful. They just weren't impactful. In those 3 games against Atlanta 2 years ago, Brandon Nimmo was 4 for 12. Pete Alonso was 3 for 10. So that part wasn't bad. They just didn't make any impact. They didn't hit any home runs. They didn't drive any runs in. There were no extra base hits. It was meek. This is worse, though. In these 3 games, 1 against Atlanta, 2 against Milwaukee, they were a combined 2 for 23. And look, they're not the only ones. And certainly not the only ones. I mean, really, the question is, who is hitting? Now, Jose Iglesias gets his 1 hit a game. He gets on base a couple of times. Starling Marte ripped that leadoff double in this game. But outside of that, nobody's hitting, which is why you saw Mendy shake the lineup up again. And I'm not opposed to it. Look, at this point, you're just you're trying anything. You're figuring out Harrison Bader. Why not? You haven't played in a while. We'll stick your ass in center field. But what does Harrison Bader do? In his first at-bat, after the Mets are gifted a runner on second and nobody out, when Alonso hit that ground ball to shortstop and Adames made the bad throw, what does Bader do? He strikes out meekly. What does he do when he comes up again with a runner on third and less than 2 outs in a 2-run game? Hit the effing ball to the outfield, Harry. What does he do? Soft contact to third base, little line drive. I'm not trying to pick on Harrison Bader. I'm just giving you an example of, all right, let's try Harrison Bader. How'd that work out? Let's get the Luis Angel Acuna youth in the lineup. Let's see how that works out. 0 for 3, did nothing. Almost made an error, but recovered. So, not going to kill him for it. He did recover. Obviously, they're forced to start Luis Torrens with Francisco Alvarez out, or sort of out, because he came in later. And Torrens comes up with a runner on second and does nothing. Let's go back to Starling Marte. I mean, I can kill him, but he did have the leadoff double that also led to nothing. Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso, you're going to play no matter what. Francisco Lindor did nothing. He's going to be tough to crush too because of the fact we know he's playing compromised. But there are no answers. You want to start Jesse Winker? Whatever. You want to start there is no good answer to this. My man Joe B was screaming this morning, you got to start Acuna. I wasn't even disagreeing at that point because I'm at the point, and I think I expressed this last night on the Rico, where I try anything. I mean, who really needs to play? No one's hitting enough outside of Iglesias and I guess Vientos up until this game where he took an 0-for and struck out 3 times, but obviously did produce in the Atlanta game and produced Friday night against the Brewers. Outside of that, nobody's hitting. But this game in particular was so infuriating. So infuriating. Iglesias gets that base hit in the first inning, and that felt big to me. I'm looking for little omens in these kinds of games. You got a guy on base. There's less than 2 outs. You've got your big hitters coming up. Give this team a lead because the Mets have been playing behind this entire road trip. In fact, you ready for this little stat? They have played 27 innings on this road trip so far. They have trailed in 20 of the 27 innings. They are playing from behind constantly. How many times they've led? Well, I mean, that's easy. 0 times. They have not had a lead since what I'm afraid is going to be the high water mark of the season, which is Edwin Diaz working out of trouble and that miraculous moment where the ball sat on third base. They haven't had a lead. So in the first inning, when Iglesias got that hit, and he's been great. You know, he's one of those guys you can't kill. He gets on base every game. He's got the long hit streak. I mean, I want Jose Iglesias up in every big spot, but I thought that first inning was huge, and it led to nothing. But the real inning that just ripped my soul out, where I knew we're just going to watch 2.5 hours of dog crap, was when Alonso hit the ground ball to Adames, who throws it to the dugout. You're getting a gift from the gods. You have a runner on second and nobody out. And I said this out loud. I know. We should have done an alt cast. I didn't do it. I apologize. We may do it tomorrow. I don't effing know. But I said this out loud. I would have said it into a microphone. If they don't score a freaking run here with a runner on second and nobody out that was gifted to you by bad defense from Adames, there's no shot they're winning this game. And maybe that's hyperbolic, and maybe that's, that's too crazy. I mean, it really turned out to be true. Because when Marte lines out, he hit the ball hard, but he hit it right at the third baseman. When Torrens hits the little weak fly ball to right field, and then Bader strikes out, you can feel it in your gut. You are given an opportunity by this Brewer team, and you didn't take advantage of it. Outside of that, it was like there were no chances. Oh, yeah, the Marte leadoff double in the 5th inning. Same thing. And think about this. This is right after the Brewers scored their 2 runs. Right after. So you got a chance to immediately get a run back, even if it's only 1 run. Get it back. Runner on second, nobody out. At least Torrens moved him by hitting a ground ball to shortstop that he could advance on. And that's when Bader hit the soft line drive and Luis Angel Acuna hit a fly ball to right field. And that's it. There's nothing else to say about this offense because it sucked for the entire night. And it was eerily reminiscent of every kind of Met collapse you want to think of. You want to use 07 or 08 or 22 or 98. You can just pick it. That's completely up to you. To me, it feels like 1998. Hi, Pete.
Ev, all this means to me, man, is that they're due. I understand. I understand. I understand it's terrible right now, but they're going to come through. They've been so resilient all season long. Why now are we sitting here going, there's no chance of them winning tomorrow? There's no chance of them winning a doubleheader in Atlanta. Explain to me how you're just going to say, I understand the facts. Don't get me wrong. But every other time this season, they've turned the corner. They find a way to come back and win games. Come on, dude.
Let me just say this to you, Pete. I have not said yet here on this wonderful Saturday and a Sunday edition of Rico Brogna that they're not going to win tomorrow. I probably inferred it. I mean, you could probably imply it from my train analogy or the tone of this entire discussion. I think that while the New York Mets have shown resilience all season long, that's a fact. I'll give you that, Pete. They've shown resilience all season long. What I would say to you and what I would say to the New York Mets and what I would say to every little Rico listening or big Rico listening is they have to prove it. Because winning and responding in August and winning and responding in June and winning and responding in April when there's nobody in the building and you're avoiding a sweep at the doubleheader hands of the playoff-bound Detroit Tigers is very different than responding to this, because this is the ultimate response. So, look, I'm all ears. I'm all eyes. We're all watching. Okay, no Met fans not watching Sunday at 3 o'clock. Now, hopefully the Jets have a big lead so our watching can be easier, but we're all watching. We're all hoping, right? But my point to you, and I pray to the baseball gods I'm wrong, is every sign is there that they're choking and that this is going to end badly. So I'm not going to dispute what they've done all season long. But what I will tell you right now is they got to go prove it. Because unfortunately, they got a couple of guys, specifically Brandon and Pete, who now have that scarlet letter on their back. It's a big C for choke because we've seen them do it before.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I understand, and I think everyone's gonna sit there and point to the offense and point to how miserable these guys are playing right now. You know who else is choking? Arizona. And I gotta be honest with you, dude. Let them choke it out. We'll find a way into the playoffs, and that's a whole new ball.
So okay, couple of things. I'm going to give you a factoid before we get into all the scenarios. I could read emails, but I think we actually set a record during this game for the amount of emails I received and how just bloodthirstily angry everybody is. You could understand.
Yeah, my phone actually died because we got too many emails while I was out tonight. It was ridiculous.
No, I love that people email during the games. Like they're doing what we're all thinking, which is we're done. Second inning, we can't get a runner back from second base after whatever. We're screwed. Here's a little stat for you, very simple one. Arizona is choking. Pete's right. I sat there after the Met game ended, glued to Diamondbacks Padres. Loved every second of it. Thank you, Kyle Higashioka, the home run stroker. That's right. Thank you, John, for that. The Mets have to win a game to make the playoffs. There you go. I just want you to know that. The New York Mets have to win a baseball game to make the postseason. They can continue to get help, and they've gotten a lot of help from the Arizona Diamondbacks over the last 2 days by losing on Friday, by losing on Saturday, and it's great. It's so great the Mets could clinch on Sunday. It's so great that if the Mets win their game on Sunday, they know going into a doubleheader against Atlanta, even if they hadn't clinched on Sunday, they just need to win once. And that's all because the Arizona Diamondbacks have been collapsing as well. But if the Mets don't win another game, they miss the playoffs. There is no way the Mets can make the postseason without winning a game. And we talked about the offense and how putrid it's been. It's obvious. Let's spend some time on the pitching. I mean, they deserve to be ripped too. Luis Severino faced a lot of bad luck on Tuesday against the Atlanta Braves. We all understand that. Sean Manaea was as bad as we've seen him since his, come to Jesus moment with Chris Sale. That was on Friday. And on Saturday, Quintana gave you like a mixed bag. It was a mixed bag because, look, 4 1/3 innings, 2 runs is not really acceptable. He kept them in the game. He threw a crap ton of pitches, and that really was his death sentence. He threw too many pitches. You go back to the first inning of this game, he gives up a leadoff hit to Jackson Chourio, gives up a stolen base, which I thought Torrens actually had a chance to throw him out. Throw was bounced a little bit, and got out of the inning, but he threw a lot of pitches. Same thing in the second inning. Gets into a little bit of trouble when he gives up that 2-out infield hit. Gets out of the inning. Has a dominant 1-2-3 third inning, but because he's striking so many guys out, his pitch count's exploding. Then you get to the fourth inning. The inning that really did him in. Gets the leadoff strikeout, gives up the hit to Adames, walks Rhys Hoskins, strikes out Gary Sanchez on a great fastball that was right down the middle and basically stunned him. The walk to Isaac Collins. You can't walk Isaac Collins. You can't do that. This is a guy who came into the game 1 for 10. He's not a major leaguer, basically. You cannot walk him. And once Quintana walks him, he puts himself in a situation to, give up the lead, which he did when Joey Ortiz blooped the single into center. But more than that, I shouldn't say more than that because the Mets couldn't score any runs, so 2 was obviously enough. But along with that, he threw too many pitches. His pitch count was exploding. So even if he got Ortiz out, let's say he got Joey Ortiz out, he was still not long for this game. He was still coming out in the 5th inning of this game. His pitch count was 85 after 4 innings. And I'll tell you this right now, I would have taken him out after 4 innings. I wasn't letting him start the 5th inning. Now, that didn't turn out to be any kind of monumental moment. He gave up the leadoff double. They gave up a sacrifice. Then he came out. And luckily, Phil Maton did just an outstanding job. He was brilliant in the bullpen today. I know that everything is bad in Metland, but I do like to give people credit who perform well. And Phil Maton did a great job, as did Luis Santalicuna. He made a great play on that ground ball when Maton first came into the game against Contreras that saved the run from scoring. But I would have pulled Quintana after 4. Guy threw 1 million pitches. So that start, how would I define the Quintana start? If Sean Manaea gets an F and Luis Severino gets a C-, I mean, I can't give that a B. You need innings. You need innings. Your bullpen is going to be taxed. You had to use all the garbage in your bullpen on Friday. You've got another game on Sunday, and potentially, depending on what you do, you may have 2 games on Monday. I think and this is not an excuse, so I feel bad even saying this because the last thing I want to do is offer this team any excuses. I don't want to hear about the rain. I don't want to hear about the travel. I don't want to hear about, well, the Brewers are trying really hard and the Royals aren't. Shut up. There's no excuse. I think Ken Rosenthal did that during the broadcast. Well, the Mets have to deal with Stop. You're a Major League Baseball team, and you got 2 freaking hit by 7 different Brewer pitchers. So what I'm about to say, hopefully you don't take as an excuse. I think it is hurting the rotation that everybody's on extra rest. Everybody. I mean, Quintana hadn't pitched in a week and a half. That's the Met decision, though. That was a decision Carlos Mendoza made. He didn't want him facing Atlanta. And the rain obviously contributed to that too. Even if you did want him facing Atlanta or anybody facing Atlanta, like David Peterson, you get pushed back a few days. And the numbers have bared it out all season long. Most Mets starters have been better on regular rest than with an extra day or 2. But let it not be forgotten, because the offense is going to get all the attention. The starting pitching has not been acceptable. Severino wasn't acceptable. Sean Manaea wasn't acceptable. Neither was Quintana. 4 1/3 innings, 2 runs from Quintana. 3 2/3 innings, 6 runs from Manaea. 4 innings, 4 runs from Severino. It's not cutting it. It's not cutting it. Now, Maton did a brilliant job. Ryan Stanek did a brilliant job keeping the game close, giving the Mets an opportunity to, dare I say, score a run or 2, which they obviously failed to do. And then Reed Garrett basically said, you know what? This sucks. Let's just blow the whole game open, which is exactly what happened. And I'm sure most people shut the TV off. I hung in there hoping. Kind of like that train that's running us over, right? You see it. It's right there. There's a really easy chance to just get away from the train by winning a couple of games. But the odds are, deep down in our soul, we're going to get run over by the train. All right, can I give you some positivity? Because this has been very, very negative. I feel very dirty. Here's the positivity. Positivity number 1. I was going to say what Pete said. They're due. I hate their due. Their due only works for one thing in life, and that is your wife is due to give birth, because eventually she will give birth. But beating a team you never beat, that the Minnesota Twins are due to beat the New York Yankees. What the heck? Has that happened? It's been 2 decades. So your due is not really an offering. My level of confidence comes from kind of what you said. As much as I need this team to prove to me and prove to all of us that they can respond to this, they've responded all year. And I'm hoping, didn't happen on Saturday, didn't happen on Friday, but I'm hoping there's a response. Because the truth is, this offense needs to explode. Sunday's game is so important. It's so important because there's a chance you can clinch. And if you win, and this is the most important part, if you win, you know that on Monday, you just need to win once, as opposed to the nightmare scenario of having to go to Atlanta and win twice. We'll go through those scenarios in a minute. But Pete, look at you. All calm and relaxed and confident. I like that. Drinking a beer. I respect.
By the way, yeah, I'm having a drunk Rico right now. I don't know if anybody realizes that. I'm having a nice drunk Rico. I'm so cool, calm, collective. Dude, I'm sorry to say this. The Mets are in the playoffs. They're going to go all the way. Like, that's how I feel right now.
What are you doing? I mean,
no,
is this the time to? Is this the moment to say that? As
yes,
we're all licking our wounds, thinking this team's collapsing, and you're telling us they're going to win the World freaking Series?
Because, and I get it, dude. They have looked terrible the past few games. The situation is outrageous. The fact that, I mean, MLB is basically trying to get the Mets into the playoffs, and the Mets are like, no, we don't want to do it. We don't want to add an extra playoff spot. No, we don't want to make it. We'll lose by 1 game. But the rain delays, everything. Do you know how special of a season this is going to turn out to be? The script for the Mets to win is unbelievable. And I understand no one believes in that. No one believes in the script. But here's the reality. There is no way that this team is going to go the last 3 games and not win a freaking game. I'm sorry, dude. It's not happening. We've seen it before. We've seen it all season long. They're going to get better. Whether they get better or not, they're going to win a game. And you know that more than anybody else.
I do not know that more than anybody. I think the problem is I've seen too many, and I understand that 25 years ago has nothing to do with today. 10 years ago has nothing to do with today. Most guys on this Met team don't care about 07, don't care about 08, don't care about 98, don't care about any other year in Met history. But as a fan, I've seen teams that feel different, that look different, that gave you a trust over 150 games or 152 games, and then close miserably. I mean, that happens, and it spoils the season. It makes you ignore all the positives that occurred for 5 months. I mean, I bring up 1998 as a year that feels very similar. 1998 is a great example. I mean, 1998 was in a lot of ways a special year in Met history. They went out and traded for Mike Piazza in the middle of May. They had some amazing victories that year. They had a victory in Houston where Piazza hit a dramatic game-tying home run of Billy Wagner, and Todd Hundley, who had been relegated to left field, hit a game-winning home run. That's just one example. They had a lot of great wins. They showed a lot of resilience that year. And then, out of absolute nowhere, they lost their last 5 games and collapsed. And when I think back to 1998, certainly I have those memories I just mentioned, but it's all about choking. It's all about choking. 2022, as we've talked about and spent a little bit of time on that in the last Rico, had a lot of great memories. Now, they didn't have a lot of adversity that season. I'll admit that. Until the end. And they didn't respond to it at all. So all the good from this regular season, while it was fun, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win on a Sunday afternoon in Milwaukee. Doesn't mean they're going to win a game in Atlanta when they truly need it.
Hold on. But let's just go back to the entire season, okay? Before they hit that hot streak at the end of May, what was the one thing that we always talked about the last game of a series on a Sunday? And they salvaged the game. They salvaged the Sunday.
Yes.
Dude, this is who they've been the whole season. All they need to do is salvage a freaking series, and we're okay.
Now you've got me so interested. I kept a chart of how the Mets did in every single series. It's not that complicated. I'll show a video of it. To see it right, I don't know if you can see it on the camera because it's very.
No, okay. There you go. There, we got it now.
How would you describe that? It's like who they played and then win, loss, win. Next series, loss, win, win, loss. There you go. For those on YouTube, you get to see it. If you're listening to the Rico on the podcast, it's just nuts. That's all it is.
No, you're nuts, but in a good way. That was great. I think people will appreciate that. But that's the point right there.
No. But I want to count like what their record is on Sundays now. Now you've got me like trying to figure out if they've got some.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, their Sunday wins are more than expected. I bet I can look it up real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up too. You got me wanting to look it up. Mets record on Sunday. All right, I'm Googling it. The Mets had a record of 1-0 on Sunday. What? Oh, it only includes September 22nd, 2024. Yeah, I can't just include that.
Oh,
yeah, you find that out while we go ahead.
I found it.
What's their record on Sundays?
Maybe we'll just ignore what I just said.
No, I want to hear it. Is it bad?
12-14.
See,
they're 12-14.
They do have a lot of bad Sundays now that I think about it. They lost the Philly game 2 weeks ago. They lost to the Marlins when they were going for the sweep. They lost to the Rockies when they were going for the sweep. There's a lot of crappy Sundays.
All right, so hold on. Here's the positive. When they were really, really bad up until May, they were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They were 6-4 up until May. On a
Sunday. You're not making this any better.
No, that was when they were the worst. They did go on a stretch where they lost like the last. But listen, the point is this.
Yeah. What's the point, Pete? Tell me.
I believe in this freaking team, dude. I'm not gonna sit here and die just yet. I'm not doing it. Evan, please don't kill me. Please.
I'm not. In fact, I'm going to make everybody feel better because one of the perks of waiting a little bit of time before we started doing the Rico Brogna is that I wanted to go through every scenario. So now we go into Sunday. You can write this down on a napkin and be prepared, knowing what does this mean if this team wins? What does it mean if that team wins? And the headline I'll give you, yes, the Mets can clinch, and we should all root for the Atlanta Braves on Sunday. I know that sounds weird. It will make a lot of sense. So let's go through the 8 scenarios because there are 8 different combinations of Diamondback, Met, Brave win and losses. Let's start with everybody wins. The Braves win, the Mets win, the Diamondbacks win. That would mean the Atlanta Braves clinch a playoff spot. The Mets would need 1 victory in a doubleheader against Atlanta to make the postseason, and the Braves would be playing for nothing. Obviously, as we've talked about, there's only 28 guys on a roster. You can't option guys up and down, so you'll probably still see most of the Atlanta regulars, but the pitching would be greatly different. The Atlanta Braves pitched Reynaldo Lopez on Saturday. They plan on pitching Charlie Morton on Sunday, which means they have, if they need it, Chris Sale and Spencer Schwellenbach ready to go for said doubleheader. Obviously, if the Braves clinch a playoff spot, I don't think they would pitch either guy because my assumption would be for that wild card series, they would want Sale, Fried, and Schwellenbach. So under that scenario where everybody wins, the Mets do have to play on Monday and win one of 2 games against a Brave team that's already clinched. Scenario number 2, Braves win, Diamondbacks win, Mets lose. We call that the nightmare scenario because that's the scenario where the Mets have to win twice. Now, granted, the Braves won't be playing for anything because they will have clinched a playoff spot. All they need is a victory or a Diamondback loss, and the Atlanta Braves have clinched a playoff spot. Keep that in mind. So, yeah, the Braves won't be playing for much, but asking the Mets to win 2 games in one day, I don't give a damn who the Braves are pitching, feels like something that would end horribly wrong for us. Scenario number 3, Braves win, Mets win, Diamondbacks lose. Look, if the Mets win and the Diamondbacks lose, no matter how you cut it, the New York Mets clinch a playoff spot, as do the Atlanta Braves, no matter what the Braves do. The only impact a Brave win would have in that scenario is our seeding. More on that later. Mets win, Diamondbacks lose. We're popping the champagne on a Sunday, Rico. They are in the postseason. No doubleheader on Monday. Scenario number 4, the Atlanta Braves win, Mets and the Diamondbacks both lose. Same kind of thing. Braves are in. They don't care. Mets play a doubleheader only needing to win once. If the Mets and Diamondbacks both win or the Mets and Diamondbacks both lose, under both circumstances, the Mets would be in a spot where they only need to win 1 game. Now, let's get to what I call the really effed up scenario. You ready for that one? The crazy one? I would actually say this is the worst case scenario. This is the worst possible scenario for the New York Mets. And this is why we're Brave fans tomorrow. The Atlanta Braves lose, the New York Mets lose, and the Arizona Diamondbacks win. Here's what that means. Are you ready? Braves have to win, Mets have to win. So they're going for it. They're probably pitching Chris Sale. If the Atlanta Braves win game 1 of that doubleheader, it is over. The Braves make the playoffs. The Mets are officially out. There would be no second game. If the Mets win game 1, Arizona makes the playoffs. And then game 2 would essentially become a 1-game playoff between the New York Mets and the Atlanta Braves. That is so far and away, actually, the worst case scenario because the Braves will be using their guys. They'll be using Chris Sale and Spencer Schwellenbach in a doubleheader against the Mets in which all they have to do is win once. The Mets would be forced to have to win twice, and the Braves would be motivated because they're playing for a playoff spot. Again, that scenario is if the Braves and the Mets lose and the Diamondbacks win. That is nightmare. Because if that's the case, you can write it down with done. I know it's baseball, anything can happen. That is the scenario you do not want. Scenario number 3. The Braves lose, the Mets win, the Diamondbacks lose. Simple. Mets in, Braves in, we all move on. There would be some seeding ramifications, which we'll get to. Here's the other scenario that's also kind of weird. Braves lose, Mets and Diamondbacks win. If that's the case, the winner of game 1 between the Mets and Braves, because neither team would have clinched, makes the postseason. Okay? So winner makes the playoffs. Braves are going for it. Mets are going for it. They would then have to play a second game, and the loser of game 1 would need to win game 2. If they lose again, they're out, and the Diamondbacks are in. That's probably the weirdest one. Think about that again. Mets play the Braves, and again, that scenario is Braves lose, Mets win, Diamondbacks win. We do not want the Braves losing. I cannot tell you enough that the Braves losing can fuck us, okay? I apologize for cursing. But I don't know how else to describe that. Like, that would screw us in a big way. Now, granted, the Mets are screwing themselves right now by playing terrible baseball, but at least under the scenario tree that we're talking about. Braves lose, Mets win, Diamondbacks win. The Mets and the Braves play game 1 of the doubleheader. Winner makes the playoffs. The winner has to then play game 2 for nothing to gain other than knocking that team out. Did that make sense? Because that scenario is kind of strange. Mets play the Braves, winner's in. They play a second game, and the team that lost game 1 has to win game 2. If they lose again, they get knocked out. I know what every Met fan's thinking. They're thinking about how they can envision this happening to us. Like, can you imagine that? Mets, Braves, we lose, okay, fine. We just got to win the second game, and now the Braves don't give 2 craps, and we lose to them anyway. And then the final scenario is everybody loses on Sunday. Again, very simple. Braves make the playoffs that way. Mets play a doubleheader against the Braves. All they have to do is win once. So those are the 8 different scenarios. Any questions, Pete? I'd love to answer any of them for you.
I do have a question because yesterday I was on air, or this morning I was on the air, or I'm not really sure when I was on the air, but it was within the past 48 hours, 24 hours. I don't know. But someone called up and said, all you have to do is split the series on a doubleheader on Monday, and it's easy because that's pretty much how they go. And am I wrong in saying that it's not that easy? Like,
no. That is incorrect. There are scenarios I just laid out where the Mets would have to win twice.
But on the other hand, too, though, like, just because you play a doubleheader doesn't mean it's an automatic split. Like, the percentages of splitting a doubleheader to go 1-1 on a doubleheader, it's not as astronomical as people make it sound. It's not like it's 100% guaranteed.
Yeah, that is a misnomer. In fact, I'm glad you asked. I have the stats in front of me. Would you guys like to hear the percentages of – and this is very different, this kind of doubleheader, because think about what I just described. In a lot of the scenarios that I described, the Braves are playing for nothing. Now, that doesn't mean they can't beat the Mets, but in terms of how they're using their pitchers, that's significant. Like, Raisel Iglesias is not pitching with the Braves having to play the next day in the wild card series. Their pitching will be employed so differently if they have everything wrapped up. So it's not your normal doubleheader. But in 2024, I'm not sure when this is when this was calculated, but I think it's the full season. There were 28 doubleheaders this season. There were sweeps in 46% of them. 46% sweeps, 54% split. Last year in 2023, 35 doubleheaders, 45% were sweeps. Year before that, 2022, 45% were sweeps. 2021, 43% were sweeps. If you go back to 2019, 57% were sweeps. So I think what the numbers tell you is that is a fallacy. It's 50-50, which is the way it is in sports. So you don't really have some kind of distinct edge in terms of there being a split. And I don't think that would even qualify in a scenario like this because these scenarios are just so weird. They're very very unique. But I think if you paid attention to all these scenarios, one thing continues to ring true. The Braves need to win. We're Brave fans. Look, the Mets scenario is around Arizona more than it is Atlanta because of where the Mets are in the standings. So if the Braves can clinch, and all they need to do to clinch is win a game. That's it. If the Braves win on Sunday, they're in. The Kansas City Royals, and we saw this on Saturday, only pitched Seth Lugo for 2 innings because they're thinking about the wild card series. I don't think they care that much about their first round opponent. Right now, Kansas City is in line to take on the Astros. If they won tomorrow and the Tigers lost, they would take on the Orioles. I doubt they're thinking about that. I don't think they give two craps. So the Braves, in pitching Charlie Morton, certainly not their best pitcher, but if they win, they're playing a meaningless doubleheader. And I would sign for that any day of the week because of the way the pitching would be allocated by them. So, yes, we are rooting for the Atlanta Braves. And then if the Diamondbacks can lose, not only can the Mets clinch, but if the Diamondbacks lose, it assures that the Mets only need to win one game in a potential doubleheader on Monday. So the Arizona-San Diego game, again, continues to be big. But also the Mets could finish the job. Like if you believe the Diamondbacks are choking and they lose on Sunday, well, then all the Mets have to do is win. I know that sounds easier than the reality, but if they go out and win, they could clinch on Sunday. Here's a weird quirk to this. And I kind of got douchey with Bob Nightingale on Twitter because Bob Nightingale very arrogantly said, if the Braves win on Sunday, they clinch a playoff spot and the 5 seed. That's not true. They don't clinch a 5 seed. Why, you ask? Thanks for asking. The Mets are 1 game behind the Atlanta Braves. 1 game behind the Atlanta Braves. If the Mets are forced to have to win a game, even if the Braves don't care about that game, if the Mets are forced to have to win a game, because let's say they win on Sunday and the Diamondbacks win on Sunday, and then the Mets win said game against the Atlanta Braves, the first game, the Mets and Braves would finish in a tie. Major League Baseball, I think, has made pretty clear they will not play doubleheaders for seeding purposes. They'll only do it to show who makes the playoffs. And that's what this all assumption is based on. They're not going to play games to determine seeds. It makes no sense. There's no home field on the line. It's simply, are you playing San Diego? Are you playing Milwaukee? If the Mets gained a game on Atlanta by beating them head-to-head, they would finish tied, and their season series would be tied. The next tiebreaker is divisional record, and the New York Mets have a better divisional record than the Atlanta Braves. So technically, if, let's say, the Mets beat the Braves in 1 game, and they were 1 game behind them, the Mets would jump over them. They would be the 5 seed. The Mets would be going to San Diego to take on the Padres, as opposed to being the 6th seed and taking on the Brewers. I'm going to tell you right now, I do not give 2 craps if it's Milwaukee or if it's San Diego. It's easy to be afraid of Milwaukee because of what they've been doing to us recently, but beggars can't be choosers. Make the playoffs. But as long as the Mets are a game behind Atlanta and they pick up said game, they would actually have the tiebreaker and they would jump above them and be the 5 seed. So I don't know how much people care about that. I think once everything is clear after Sunday, we can obviously get into that a little bit more, but that's just a little background. They could still jump the Atlanta Braves based on those tiebreakers. My God, Pete, this is giving me a giant headache. But I hope that people feel more informed now and feel like we know what the hell is going on as we're sitting there at Sunday at 3 o'clock watching 800 baseball games. Actually, you really don't have to watch 800 baseball games. You just have to watch 3. The Met game, the Brave game, because we're rooting for the Braves, and obviously the Diamondback game.
Dude, I'm stoked. I cannot wait. Like, listen, I'm going to be watching the Jets game at 1 o'clock. That should be over by 2. And then
that should be over by 2? Shut up.
I'm feeling really good, Ev. I'm feeling very good, very confident. And I got to be honest with you. I think the best case scenario that you laid out is that we go into Monday that we've already locked it up and that we just have to play a game and win 1 game or whatever the case is. I honestly feel like the Diamondbacks have blown this. The Mets are going to win tomorrow. I feel good about this. And I think that Mets fans really have to just take a deep breath, like we've done all season long. Dude, you started the season, take a deep breath.
I did.
Let's finish the season, take a deep breath.
Well, I'm going to try. Now, here's our pitching situation. David Peterson is making the start on Sunday. I get it. I understand it. I think it's a better matchup having Peterson take on the Milwaukee Brewers. You hold back Severino and Tyler McGill for the Atlanta series. The way this is lining up is if the Mets can win tomorrow, Sunday, today, because it is Sunday, and most people will probably be listening now on Sunday. If the Mets win on Sunday and clinch a playoff spot, they would have Luis Severino for game 1 of said wild card series, right? And then they could actually come back with Sean Manaea. He pitched on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's 5 days rest. So they would actually be able to go Severino, Manaea, Quintana in those 3 games, which is pretty close to ideal, no matter how well or badly these guys have pitched recently. If the Mets are forced to have to play a doubleheader against the Atlanta Braves, and let's say it's the scenario where they only need to win once, it's an interesting discussion. But if they only need to win once, do you go Tyler Miguel? Thinking, hey, I got Severino in my back pocket so that if somehow I lose the first game, I've got my better pitcher to finish the job. But if I can win the first game, I've got Luis Severino lined up to pitch game 1 of the wild card series. Do you do the opposite and say, I'm going for the kill? I don't want to screw around. I don't want to play a second game. And if I've got to start Tyler McGill game 1 of the wild card series, I'll start Tyler McGill game 1 of the wild card series.
I think the best case scenario is McGill goes out there game 1, they win the game, call it a day, and you save Severino. Listen, I got to be honest with you. If Severino's pitching game 2, if Severino's pitching any of those games on Monday, it puts us in a bad spot.
Well, I mean, sort of. It sort of does. If they have to play 2 games, it puts them in an awful spot because if they survive those 2 games, they would not have a starting pitcher on regular rest to pitch game 1 of a playoff series. Like that. Now, I'm also, I think I have the opinion of, I know I have the opinion of, if the Mets are forced to play 2 games, they're not surviving it. Like, if it got to that point where they're playing the second game, like, something horrible will happen. But the factor in all of this is that if the Braves win their game on Sunday, they're not playing for anything. And as much as that would make it worse for us to lose to a Brave team that's not playing for anything, logic says they're not using their bullpen. They're not using anybody, really, that they may use the following day. And a guy like Marcell Ozuna, who's had a great year, may not play. He's certainly not going to play both games. So it would be the ultimate, how do you possibly lose when you have a team that doesn't care? That's why I'm telling you, man, it's a weird feeling, but passionate Brave fan on Sunday because let them clinch. I don't want to deal with Chris Sale and Spencer Schwellenbach. I mean, I don't want anything to do with that.
When's the last time you think you rooted for the Braves?
I'm sure I have when they played the Phillies. Like, I'm sure there's been Brave Philly games where I've done that. But look, I've always said this about sports. Sometimes there are teams you hate, but you got to root for them in certain situations for the betterment of your own team. And clearly, just the way things have fallen here, you root for the Atlanta Braves. Because I do not want to be sitting here doing a Rico late Sunday night talking about how the Braves are battling for their lives too. So those are all the scenarios. Hopefully I explained them well. Do you want me to go into these emails or is it like probably unhealthy?
We can. I just want to do one thing because our boy, Anthony Gallo, who does a great job, he's about to go on air at 1:00. He's going to do some Met stuff too on WFAN. So if you're listening live and we end rather soon, if you want to continue the Met conversation, tune into WFAN for Anthony Gallo. But yes, go into the emails right now. Let's go.
Let's do a few of them because I'm not joking, there's hundreds of them. Mike writes, the Mets are the tightest team in baseball right now. I'm so glad and relieved that Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso told Steve Gelbs that this is so different from 2022 because if I am to believe my own eyes, the results have been identical. Someone on this team who doesn't require a diaper change needs to take over and cash in with runners in scoring position. I feel sick right now. Lucas writes, It's a bad week, but it's only a couple of games. I'm doubling down. We're still in the driver's seat. The magic number will be 2. The Brewers have no high leverage bullpen arms. We will win tomorrow. Atlanta will clinch tomorrow, and we'll have nothing to play for. And it's very hard to sweep doubleheaders anyway with win second necessary of magic numbers. All right. Well, first of all, it's not that tough to sweep doubleheaders as we just talked about. But I think in the case of the Braves, it may be tough. And he's right about the Brewers. I mean, Pat Murphy already said it. Like, Devin Williams isn't going to pitch. Joel Payamps isn't going to pitch. The Brewers are not going to use their high-leverage guys. They're starting Colin Ray. He's going to make the start on Sunday. But haven't the Mets proven to you it doesn't even freaking matter? I mean, it doesn't matter who's pitching. The Mets can't hit him. Ralph writes, you know the Braves will do everything they can to beat us both games on Monday. They won't pitch one of their top guys, but they will try very hard. Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, the guys on the field will try hard. I always stand by that. But the pitching and the way you handle your pitching, very, very different. Alex writes, late September games and the Mets can't buy a hit, playing flat. And, of course, d'Arnaud hits a home run for the Braves. I'm feeling defeated. Justin writes, this team has no heart. What was the point of being the hottest team in baseball in August and September? At the end of the day, this team has no heart and laid down and died. I was excited and hopeful for a playoff run, but I should have known better. I should have known they're the same old Mets. And then to add to my misery, Travis d'Arnaud, of all people, wins it for the Braves. You can't make this up. God hates Met fans. P.S. I'll still watch tomorrow on Monday because either I'm a diehard Mets fan or a goddamn fool. Actually, I'm both. Howard writes, 3 down, 3 to go. This will go down with the other 12 years of misery. 1973, 1985, 1988, 1999, 2000, 02, 06, 07, 08, 15, 16, and 22. You left a couple of years out, by the way. Like 98 to me is a big one. That's one of my big choke years. Can't leave that one out. In 3 games, the Mets have scored 5 runs. They're 13 for 94. That's a 134 batting average. They're 0-for-10 with runners in scoring position, 28 strikeouts, and 6 walks. This is a collective choke of epic proportions. Boy, he's right about that. I mean, those numbers are just...
Hold on. Let me ask you a question. I'm being serious, Ev. We were 11 games into the 500 back in the end of May. Are we really saying that this is a choke job?
Well, this is a choke job. I mean, what do you want to call it? You want to just call it just a tough stretch of games in September? What do you want to call it?
No, but I'm saying if you look at the season overall, like they fought their way back into it. Yeah, it did end up. It might not end up the way we want it to, which I think it still will be. But like, you can't call it a choke job.
No, I think you can. I think if you don't call if the Mets don't make the playoffs, and again, we went through all those scenarios, it is still right there for them to make the postseason. Like, literally, they have to win tomorrow and 1 game of a doubleheader, and they'd make the postseason. That's all they have to do. If they don't do that and you don't want to call it a choke job because the rest of the season was so much fun, then please explain to me what a choke job actually is. Did the Boston Red Sox choke? They had a 3-0 lead. Or is that just a couple of games they didn't play well? I'm sorry, the Yankees. I said the Red Sox. You know what I mean? Did the Yankees Yankee fans appreciated that? I reversed it for you. Like, I know that 3 or 4 games in baseball may not seem fair to say that, but that's just the way it is. Like, did they choke in 2022? They had a wonderful season outside of 6 games that they played, or really 5 games that they played against Atlanta and San Diego.
They were so bad, but they were so bad the first 2 months of the season. Like, they weren't expected to get this far.
Stop. Don't. And you're pissing me off, Pete. Don't give me we would have taken this in March. We would have taken this in April. We would have taken this in May. They were set up to make the playoffs. They've gone to Milwaukee and Atlanta and played like crap. Don't tell me, but you would have felt good in April. Don't do that. I don't care how many drinks you've had. Unacceptable.
I'm not saying you'd feel good about it, but the point is the first 2 months of the season was so bad. The fact that they fought back so close, honestly, I feel like most times you would have accepted this season as it was.
I can't possibly disagree with you more, but we've done the Rico for an hour, and I'm done screaming. But I will end with one last email. one last email, and I apologize to everybody else who wrote. Thank you, the ricob@gmail.com. Brian writes, Touche Mets. I've been watching the Mets obsessively for as long as I can remember, but I'm pretty sure this season qualifies as one of the more cruel years in recent memory. After coming into the season with little to no expectations, fully behind the methodology of allowing Stearns to evaluate clear payroll for next year, I was prepared to watch the president of baseball operations leverage the outperforming shorter-term contracts he signed in the offseason and continue to bolster the farm system. I gouged a bit when they elected to soft buy. However, they started to win. The seeds were planted, and I didn't know it yet, but the Mets had their claws in me. I reluctantly came around over the next couple of weeks, beginning to thoroughly enjoy the wins and repressing my confirmation bias that this was the wrong course, even peeking at the standings here and there. They kept winning, and then it happened. I started to believe. This is the elegant evil genius that is the Mets. Despite going in with no expectations, they methodically lured me back in, playing like the best team in baseball for since June, just to stab me in the back and fall apart in the final two series in fantastic fashion. An elegant clinic on maximizing pain. Well played this year, Mets. Very well played. P.S. Bookending the season with 5 loss streaks or a 5-game losing streak seems to be beautifully symmetrical. Thank you, Brian. I was not similar to Brian. I think a lot of Met fans were. A lot of Met fans looked at this season and said, we suck. I don't believe in this team. Maybe they even said they didn't want to buy. And then things got so good and they looked so good that you started to buy in. I always thought this team could be better than people thought. Did I think they would be this good or at times this good? Probably not. Did I think their pitching at times would be that good? Probably not. Did I ever envision in a year in which I did think they'd win 86 games and sneak into the playoffs, did I ever think I'd be dreaming as big as I've dreamt at times? Probably not. But they have sucked us all into different ways of believing in this team, even if you are more optimistic like me, even if you were as negative as our last emailer. And that is why it is so imperative to not only save our poor baseball souls, but save this season. If you want this season to be remembered for anything other than a choke job, the Mets have to make the playoffs. Period. If you want to remember the OMG concert and the grimace and Francisco Lindor's MVP bid and all the fun stuff, some of the great wins that they had, if you want that, they have to make the playoffs. Because I'm telling you right now, if the New York Mets don't make the playoffs this season, it doesn't matter what the expectations were. It doesn't matter how bad you thought they were going to be. If they miss the playoffs with the way they've been playing, this season will solely be remembered for the way it ended. And that's why 1998 is the perfect comp. Because 1998, to me at least, maybe not to everybody else, I don't know. You can email me and tell me I'm wrong. When I think in 1998, all I can think about is effing Jay Payton trying to run on Andrew Jones's arm. And Leo Mazzoni and Bobby Cox with that shit-eating grin the final weekend of the year, laughing as the Mets collapsed in Atlanta. Tony Phillips looking at strike 3. Nothing else about that season do I think fondly about. So it is on the New York Mets. Because, look, this is the last time we're talking until the Sunday ends. And at least we know our destiny to some degree. To some degree. Are we going to the playoffs? Or are we dealing with the doubleheader from hell? They have to make the playoffs. And to the Atlanta Braves, please win. Thank you. I just want to make that clear. Take care of business on Sunday. Let's go Braves. Geez, I shouldn't have said that. I feel dirty saying that. Let's go Mets. I feel cleansed. Anyhow, we appreciate your patience. We appreciate you hanging around on a late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. For those listening on Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon before game time, try to keep calm. It's going to be a very, very hectic Sunday. Thank you very much for listening, downloading, and subscribing to another edition of Rico Brogna. I promise you that as soon as game 160 ends, it's game 160. As soon as the Sunday game ends, Pete and I will be raring and ready to go, and we will be Ricoing as soon as that game is done. Even if the Diamondbacks and Braves are still playing, we'll at least react to it. Remember, all the games start at the exact same time, so even if they're still playing, it should be close to the end. So be tuning into that if you want to break from football. It'll be during the 6 o'clock window, right? 3 o'clock game? Yeah, figure 5:30, 6 o'clock, somewhere around then. Anyhow, thank you very much for listening to another edition of Rico Brogna. Goodbye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.